For a few hours, an entire country vanished. No messages delivered, no bank transactions processed, no emergency calls connected. Hospitals went silent, airports froze, news channels stared at blank dashboards, and somewhere in a small bedroom, lit by the pale glow of a laptop screen, a teenager blinked at an error message and whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." This is the story of how modern civilization, loud, powerful, and endlessly connected, was brought to its knees by someone who still needed permission to go outside after sunset. It didn't begin with anger. It didn't begin with ideology. It began with boredom. He lived in a quiet apartment on the edge of a crowded city, the kind of place the internet rarely remembers. Concrete walls, narrow streets, power cuts at night. His parents worked long hours. School felt like a waiting room for a future he wasn't sure existed. And so, like millions of teenagers before him, he escaped into the one place that felt infinite, the internet. At first, it was games, then forums, then code. Lines of symbols that felt like a secret language, a puzzle the world didn't know it was hiding. While other kids learned how to drive, he learned how systems talked to each other, how digital doors opened, how sometimes they didn't need a key at all. The first time he broke into anything, it wasn't dramatic, just a forgotten test server for a small website. No alarms, no flashing warnings, just quiet access. It felt like discovering a hidden corridor inside reality. And once you learn the corridors exist, you start wondering where they all lead. Months passed. His curiosity grew faster than his fear. Each system he touched taught him something new. Not because he wanted to destroy anything, but because everything suddenly felt fragile, like the world was made of glass pretending to be steel. What he didn't know was that his hands were getting closer and closer to the central nervous system of an entire nation. The night it happened, it was raining, a slow, steady rain that tapped against his window like a countdown. He was debugging a script he barely expected to work. It was meant to test a vulnerability he'd seen discussed online, something theoretical, academic, harmless. At least, that's what he told himself. He ran it. At first, nothing happened. Then his internet connection froze. He refreshed the page. Nothing. Down the street, traffic lights flickered and locked on red. In a hospital 3 kilometers away, a nurse's screen went dark mid-report. In a bank downtown, transactions stalled mid-transfer. In the National Telecom Exchange, engineers watched as traffic collapsed into silence. Within minutes, millions of people were offline. Not slow, not glitching, gone. For citizens, it felt like falling into a digital black hole. Messages unsent, calls unanswered, payment machines blinking uselessly in grocery stores, families unable to reach each other, emergency services switching to outdated radio backups not used in years. At first, officials thought it was a routine outage, then a hardware failure, then a regional network attack. By the time they realized the truth, that something deliberate had triggered a cascade failure, the country was already in the dark. Internet maps lit up around the world, showing one nation suddenly disconnected like a severed nerve. News agencies scrambled. Rumors spread faster than facts ever could. A cyber attack, a foreign government, an act of war. Meanwhile, in that small bedroom, the teenager's hands began to shake. He hadn't targeted a country. He hadn't targeted anything at all. He had nudged one unstable point in a system designed with too many shortcuts and too much trust. One pressure point nobody expected to be touched. And the system, massive, arrogant, interconnected, folded inward on itself. Experts would later describe it as a perfect storm of negligence. Redundant systems silently disabled. Safety checks ignored in the rush for speed. Layers of digital infrastructure stacked so tightly together that one fracture echoed through all of them. But in that moment, none of that mattered to him. All he could see was a world suddenly quiet. Across the country, people felt something ancient return. The feeling of being unreachable, of being small again, of realizing how much of life now runs through invisible wires we don't control and barely understand. Hours passed. Government officials held emergency meetings by candlelight and whiteboards. Engineers manually rerouted connections line by line. International cybersecurity teams offered help, and slowly, painfully slowly, the lights began to flicker back on. By morning, the country reconnected. The world exhaled, but the teenager did not. He spent spent the next 3 days barely sleeping. Every siren outside made his stomach drop. Every knock in the hallway felt like the end of his life as he knew it. He erased files, then restored them, then erased them again, not knowing whether he was hiding evidence or destroying proof of his own innocence. When the authorities finally traced the origin, they didn't find a criminal empire. They found a child, a quiet arrest. No headlines at first, just a stunned mother standing in a doorway, a father who kept asking what his son had done, to be taken away by men who wouldn't meet his eyes. Interrogators expected arrogance. They found terror. He cried when they showed him the impact. Hospitals, flights, emergency calls, millions of lives briefly thrown into chaos. He kept repeating the same sentence: "I was just testing." In court, the prosecutor spoke about damage, risk, national security. The defense spoke about immaturity, curiosity, negligence that existed long before a teenager ever touched a keyboard. Experts were called. They explained how modern infrastructure isn't one machine, but thousands of fragile agreements pretending to be solid. They spoke about digital monoculture, about cost-cutting, about how convenience often outruns safety. And for a moment, the courtroom went quiet under a shared realization. If it hadn't been him, it would have been someone else. The teenager was sentenced lightly compared to the scale of the event. Rehabilitation, restrictions, years of supervised education, no internet without oversight, no anonymous digital life. His name was sealed, his face never shown. The country moved on, but something else lingered. After the blackout, audits revealed just how many nations were built on the same invisible weaknesses, how close the world already was to silence without any villain necessary. Today, the teenager is older. He studies cybersecurity under strict supervision. He rarely speaks about that night. When he does, he never describes the power. He only talks about the fear. Fear of how small the action was. Fear of how huge the consequence became. Fear of how easy it was to touch the spine of something that holds millions of lives together. We like to imagine disasters as loud, explosive, violent, but the most dangerous ones often arrive quietly. A click, a line of code, a system that trusted too much. Somewhere right now, another teenager is staring at a screen, feeling the same curiosity, the same pull toward invisible corridors hidden inside the world. And the uncomfortable truth is this: the internet didn't collapse because it was attacked. It collapsed because it was always fragile. And we are still living on top of it, pretending it's unbreakable.